guys. So today I want to talk to you about technologies that I find overhyped, technologies that data scientists should be pretty focused on in 2020. So the first technology is Hadoop, together with its successors, first Spark and Flink. So in my opinion, these technologies that were considered as like big data, and they kind of they never really caught up. I think that Hadoop had yeah, its problems that were never solved. It is very heavy and bulky. It's difficult to learn. It is not particularly efficient. I saw only like very few cases where it actually makes sense to use Hadoop. And in reality, what you see is companies that spend a lot of money running like toy use cases. This is like copying, I don't know, like a few, like 1 gigabyte from like one instance to another and doing some like basic transformation just as a like POC use case that never really goes to production. So I think that it is mainly, I would say, like banks, financial services. Uh, they like exploited it a little bit, but even them, it is completely like underused compared to the money that they invest in technology. So Spark is the first successor of Hadoop. Spark, I discovered it around 5 years ago. I was in Amsterdam in a big Spark event, Spark Summit. I saw people from Cloudera, people from IBM, people from a lot of startups in Europe. I thought that the main, I would say, team, like what people were talking about back then, was that how do they get into Spark, and they're looking into Spark as like a technology that will solve all the problems. I think that in practice, doing some Spark projects afterwards, I think that a lot of the I would say like Hadoop challenges were never really solved by Spark, and it still remains a technology that is quite like not really mature. Um, the Spark RDBs and data frames, they will never be as good as Python Pandas, and coding is quite difficult, like debugging is very difficult. The APIs, they keep changing every time they like release things, they move quite drastically. I remember like going from like version 2.2 in Spark to 2.3, a lot of things don't work anymore. So the code was not very well, I would say, supported. Um, and then lastly, Flink. So this is the second successor. Was supposed to solve a lot of the Spark limitations. So it was like used more for like real-time processing. And for me, Flink never really caught up because the community was just never there. Support was never there, and in general, not many people use Flink. So if you decide to deploy Flink on your like in your company, you will probably struggle quite hard to find people that have the right skills to actually use it. So number two in my list is TensorFlow and PyTorch. So I think that most of the excitement in like deep learning, machine learning is coming from TensorFlow and PyTorch. TensorFlow coming from Google, PyTorch coming from Facebook. Um, I think that there actually you see amazing projects online, people deploying all sorts of like convolutional neural networks with them and like guns and all sorts of I don't know fancy like deep learning networks. I think that in reality they are great for like toy examples. They're quite good for Kaggle. Uh, Perfect for hobbies like students, last year students, computer science engineering. Probably if you build a project in PyTorch, you get like a lot of points from your professors. In reality, very few JDs that actually ask for it. Very few companies that know how to use it. In reality, very similar problem to what I just said about Hadoop and Spark. Like the code is kind of like so. The documentation is not very good. The APIs they keep changing. I would recommend you to stay away from it unless you are like coding for Kaggle or coding to like basically like as a hobbyist data scientist. Next technology is quantum computing. So quantum computing, I think that it is a great hobby. I see like people that get into it in all sorts of like open classes, and I saw that there's like a Python library that came out that lets you do all sorts of like quantum computing simulation. These things are all very exciting, but just remember that it doesn't really increase your employability. You don't really become, I would say, more useful in the market. Nobody's using quantum computing. You want to be ahead of the curve, great, but just know that it will probably take years and years until this technology will actually be used by companies. So until then, do it only if you're really excited and interested in it. And the last one is a bit more controversial, is blockchains. So blockchains is something that a lot of data scientists um, are actually getting into just because it's another like cool technology, sort of like how AI is or how AI was maybe before. I think that in reality, I am a bit like critic of blockchains. I find the technology to be cool in theory. Actually, you see like very few actual like examples where it's useful. Most of the companies that like basically talk about like blockchains a lot in their like marketing in their presentations. They're sort of full of shit. Like you don't really get to see why the blockchains are actually useful. There's a whole there's typically it's a bit difficult to justify to use such a like complex system over using just a simple database, and most of the companies, they just don't do it. They can't justify it well. So you will see a lot of startups that do it or say that they do it, or like maybe like they ask for it, like Hyperledger and all kind of like blockchain um, environments and frameworks. But I think that in reality, um, the more mature companies are kind of like staying away from it. So again, to increase your employability in 2020, probably you should focus on other technologies, and there's plenty of them. There's plenty of things that you should kind of like to learn and sharpen in 2020. So you don't have to focus on all sorts of like niche, hardcore things that people find cool. Um, you should focus on completely different things. So on another video, I will talk to you about what is actually not not used enough, what people are not, uh, n- don't have enough attention to. So um, please leave your comments below, like this video, and please subscribe to my channel. Cheers.